The twin suns of planet Zarak shined brightly over the rocky valley. In the center of the valley stood a large black stone. Stuck deep in the stone was an ancient sword, tall, silver, and glowing faintly blue. It had no name, but every alien knew its legend. Many had tried to lift it. Warriors, kings, beasts, machines. None could move it. Even an inch. The sword had been there for over 1,000 years. The elders of Zarak said, "Only the true one can lift it. Only the chosen." Every year, a huge event called the Trial of Strength was held. Thousands came to try their luck. And every year, they all failed. One alien warrior named Krago the Crusher stepped forward. He was tall, covered in thick armor, with 4 arms and a history of crushing skulls. The crowd cheered as he walked to the sword. Krago growled and grabbed the hilt. He screamed and pulled with all his power. His muscles bulged. The ground cracked under his feet. Nothing. The sword did not move. Krago roared in anger, smashed the stone around the sword, and walked away in shame. Next came Zalna of the Fire Clan. She had fire in her blood and could melt stone with her hands. She touched the sword. Steam hissed. The blade glowed. For a moment, then went cold again. Failure. Then a silence came. A strange sound buzzed in the sky. A ship burning, crashing, out of control, flew over the valley and slammed into the cliffs. The crowd ran. Dust flew everywhere. The ground shook. From the broken ship, someone crawled out. He was not an alien. He had no scales, no horns, no fur. He was a human. His name was Jake Carter, a young soldier from Earth. His ship had been damaged during a patrol mission. Now he was lost, hungry, and injured. 2 alien guards pointed weapons at him. "What are you?" One of them barked. Jake raised his hands. "I don't want trouble. Just water. Please." The aliens laughed. "You're from the dead planet. Earth fell long ago." Jake didn't answer. He looked around. Hundreds of aliens stared at him with cold eyes. And then he saw it. The sword. It stood in the stone like a monument. The way it glowed. It called to him. Jake walked slowly toward it. The crowd gasped. Some shouted for him to stop. "Only warriors try the sword. He's just a weak human." Jake didn't care. Something deep inside told him to go on. He reached the stone and looked at the sword closely. It was unlike anything he had seen. It didn't look alien. In fact, it looked human. He placed one hand on the hilt. Suddenly, the sky darkened. The wind stopped. A strange energy moved through the valley. Jake's heart raced. His hand tingled. And then the sword glowed bright blue. Everyone went silent. "Let go!" shouted an elder. "You don't know what you're doing." Jake stepped back, shocked. His hand was shaking. He hadn't pulled it. He had only touched it. But for the first time in history, the sword had responded. Whispers spread through the crowd. He made it glow. Impossible. He's human. Is he the one? Jake turned around and saw fear in their eyes. And something else. Hope. An old alien named Iraq, with long white horns and wise eyes, stepped forward. "You must leave this place," Iraq said quietly. "Why?" Jake asked. "Because the sword has spoken to you, and now everything will change." Jake didn't understand, but he could feel it. Something inside him had woken up. He looked once more at the sword, and the sword almost looked like it was waiting for him. Jake Carter couldn't sleep. That night, under the 2 moons of Zarak, he sat alone near the ruins of his crashed ship. The alien crowd had left. Some whispered his name. Others wanted him gone. But the sword had not left his mind. It had glowed under his hand. It had felt alive. Jake looked down at his palm. It still tingled. Strange lines had appeared on his skin, faint, blue, and pulsing like veins of light. He didn't understand what was happening. He didn't ask for any of this. Suddenly, a cold wind blew across the valley. The stars above began to flicker. Time seemed to slow, and then he heard a voice, but no one was there. You touched what should not be touched. Jake stood up fast. Who said that? No answer. Just silence. Then the wind shifted, and the sword on the black stone whispered again. Do not lift it, human. The galaxy is not ready. Jake's breath caught in his throat. The voice wasn't loud. It was deep, ancient, and full of sorrow. Like it had watched entire worlds burn. Then suddenly, images filled Jake's mind. Not dreams, memories. He saw a great war. Alien empires fighting in space. Entire planets destroyed. And at the center of it all, the sword dotted cut through ships. Like paper, it shattered shields. And when held by a human general, it screamed with power that bent reality. That general's face looked just like Jake's. No way. He whispered. The voice returned. Your kind made the sword. Then they vanished. Do not repeat their mistake. Jake dropped to his knees, sweating. His heart pounded in his chest. Why him? Why now? Before he could think more, someone approached from the shadows. It was the old alien, Iraq, with his long white horns and tired eyes. You saw it, didn't you? Iraq asked. Jake nodded. I think I saw the past, the war, the sword's power. Iraq sat beside him and looked up at the stars. Long ago, before our oldest histories, there were humans like you. They ruled not with armies, but with knowledge and weapons even the gods feared. That sword was one of them. Jake stared. Then why is it here? Iraq's eyes grew dark. Because it was hidden, sealed. After the human empire fell, the survivors left that sword on Zarak. They wanted no one to find it. They believed it was too dangerous. Jake asked, then why let people try to lift it every year? Iraq sighed. To remind us that no one is worthy. It is a ritual of failure. We never expected you. The old alien stood up slowly. Listen. To me, human, the sword does not just test strength. It tests your soul. If you truly try to lift it and fail, it will destroy you. Jake was silent. Then why did it react to me? Iraq looked him in the eyes. Because your blood remembers. Because something inside you is still connected. Then Iraq turned to leave. But before he vanished into the dark, he said one final thing. The sword has a purpose. But purpose is not the same as destiny. If you choose to lift it, be ready to lose everything. Jake sat there alone again, watching the glowing stone. The voice, the memories, the warning. He didn't ask for this power. He didn't want a war. But something deep inside whispered back, you were never meant to be ordinary. And far above, in the quiet stars, something began to stir. Something that had been sleeping for a long, long time. The night on Zarak was not quiet anymore. Jake Carter woke up choking on black smoke. Fire danced across the dry ground around him. His crashed ship was burning again, this time, not by accident. A symbol was carved into the metal beside him. It looked like a twisted eye made of sharp lines, still glowing red. 3 words were scratched below it. Leave the sword. Jake jumped to his feet and scanned the dark. But the attackers were already gone. The valley was empty, but not safe. Someone wanted him dead. He looked at the sword in the distance. Its soft blue glow still pulsed gently in the stone, like a sleeping heart. Jake's hand burned again. The glowing lines on his palm were brighter now, and his instincts whispered, "You're being hunted." Far away, in the dark mountains of Zarak, a group of cloaked aliens stood in a circle. Their leader, a tall shadow with glowing purple eyes, slammed a staff into the ground. "He is not the chosen," the leader hissed. "He is the destroyer." "The sword moved for him," another said. "It was a mistake," growled the leader. "He is human. That bloodline must never rise again." They chanted in a dead language. A beast growled in a cage nearby. Its eyes glowed the same red as the mark burned on Jake's ship. "Send the hunter," the leader ordered. The sword must remain buried. Back in the valley, Jake searched the area around his broken ship. He found small footprints fresh. He was being watched. Suddenly, someone dropped behind him. Jake spun, ready to fight, but the figure raised her hands. She was tall, strong, with dark blue skin and eyes like fire. "I'm not your enemy," she said. "I'm Lyra. I came to warn you." "Warn me about what?" Jake asked. She looked at the sword. "You touched something sacred. Now the shadows want you gone." Jake frowned. "Shadows?" Lyra nodded. "An ancient cult. They believe the sword must never be lifted. They kill anyone who tries. Tonight they came for you." Jake looked at his burning ship. "I figured that out." Lyra stepped closer. "You're not just a soldier, are you?" Jake shook his head. "I was. Now I don't know what I am." She studied his hand. "The mark is growing. The sword is changing you." Jake's voice turned serious. "What does it want from me?" Lyra answered. "It wants you to remember." Before Jake could ask more, a loud roar echoed through the valley. The ground trembled. Trees cracked. A strange black mist began to spread from the hills. Lyra's eyes went wide. "They sent it." Jake grabbed a broken metal pipe from the wreckage. "What is it?" Lyra's voice dropped. "A hunter from the shadow cult. It can smell your fear." From the shadows came a beast taller than any man. It had no eyes, no face, only a mask of stone and long claws that dripped with smoke. Its chest glowed with the same symbol Jake saw on his ship. The beast roared and charged. Jake and Lyra ran. "Why is it after me?" Jake shouted. "You made the sword glow," Lyra said, pulling him behind a rock. "That's all they needed. They fear what you might become." They barely escaped a swipe of the beast's claws. Jake swung the pipe and hit the beast, but it didn't even flinch. Then Jake's hand began to glow again. Blue light exploded from his palm, knocking the beast back. Jake stared at his hand. "What was that?" Lyra was stunned. "The sword is waking up inside you." Jake didn't understand it, but in that moment he felt something new: strength, not just of the body, but of the mind. He stood taller. The beast roared again. Jake turned to Lyra. "How do we kill it?" She smirked. "We don't. We outrun it." Together, they sprinted toward the hills. Behind them, the beast chased with fire in its lungs and shadows in its steps. Jake wasn't the same anymore. The sword had chosen him, and now, the galaxy would too. Jake opened his eyes, but he wasn't on Zarak anymore. He stood in the middle of a giant black void. There was no sky, no ground, no stars, only floating pieces of stone and memory. He looked down. The sword was in his hand. It was glowing like fire trapped in ice. Blue light ran along its edge. It hummed not like a machine, but like a voice. Then it spoke not in words, but in images. The sword was showing him its memory. A world appeared around him. Not Zarak, not any alien planet. It was Earth, but not the Earth Jake knew. It was older, grander, filled with silver towers, floating cities, and skies full of starships. Humans walked like gods. In the center of it all stood a man who looked exactly like Jake. He wore armor made of light, and in his hand the same sword. He was leading an army of humans, facing a united alien force that stretched across galaxies. And then came war. The stars themselves were burning. Jake stumbled backward. The memory was too much, too powerful. Suddenly, he heard the sword's voice, gentle and ancient. "You are a piece of what was lost." Jake gripped the sword tighter. "Why are you showing me this?" The voice answered, "Because you must. Choose what will return." The scene shifted again. He saw the sword being sealed away. Humans disappearing. The galaxy forgetting them. The knowledge erased. The fear growing. Aliens calling it a myth, a curse, a mistake. And yet, the sword waited. For someone like Jake, for his bloodline. Jake gasped and opened his eyes again, this time. Back on Zarak, he was lying near the black stone. The sword was still stuck deep in it. But now, it knew him. Lyra stood nearby watching him. "You were gone for hours," she said. Jake blinked. "No, it felt like minutes. You didn't move." "Your eyes glowed," she said. "What did?" "You see?" Jake looked at the sword. "My past," he said. "And maybe my future." Later, they sat by a small fire in the caves outside the valley. Lyra listened quietly as Jake explained what the sword showed him. She asked one question. "Why show you now?" Jake thought for a moment. "Because it wants me to remember who I was. Who we were. Earth didn't die. It was hidden or forgotten." Lyra's voice lowered. "And now you remember, will you lift it?" Jake looked down at his glowing palm. "Not yet. Not until I'm ready." But the sword had other plans. That night, as Jake slept, the sword pulsed with light. A hidden panel at the base of the black stone cracked open. Inside it was something strange, a human device, a bracelet made of the same metal as the sword. It floated out and latched onto Jake's wrist. He woke up with a start. What the bracelet melted into his skin. He felt a sharp pain and then a flood of energy. He could see symbols, maps, data, memories of Earth's lost technology. The sword was giving him more. It wasn't just a weapon. It was a key. And Jake was the lock. From deep space, far beyond Zarak, something received a signal. A silent message. The bloodline has awakened. And in the cold dark of forgotten human ruins, a machine blinked to life. Jake Carter was standing in his childhood bedroom. But that was impossible. Earth was gone. He looked around, confused. The posters on the wall, the broken fan spinning slowly, the toy soldier on the desk, it was all exactly how he remembered it. Then, he saw his little brother. Alive. Smiling. Double quotes. "Jake," the boy said, "you left me behind." Jake's heart stopped. "No," he whispered. You died. In the attack, I was too late." The boy's smile faded. "You promised you'd protect me. You lied." Jake wasn't dreaming. He was inside the trial of the spirit, the sword's final test before unlocking its true power. It was not a battle of blades. It was a battle of memory, guilt, and truth. The world around him shifted again. He now stood on a battlefield, bodies everywhere. His old squad, dead, burned, gone. A voice echoed across the sky. "Is this the strength you bring? Regret? Pain? Failure?" Jake shouted, "I didn't choose this. I never wanted to be some ancient hero." The voice replied, cold and honest. "Then, why did the sword choose you?" The storm came. Jake ran through a maze of voices. Every step, a memory. Every turn, a face from the past. People he'd failed. People he'd forgotten. At the center of the storm, Jake found a mirror. He looked inside. But it wasn't him. It was the other Jake. The general from the sword's memory. The one who led armies, who destroyed planets. Cold. Empty. Powerful. "Is this who I become?" Jake asked. The reflection spoke. "No, this is who you already are. You just don't see it yet." Jake raised his fist and shattered the mirror. The storm stopped. The voices fell silent. And then, Jake opened his eyes. He was back in the cave, but something was different. The sword was glowing again, brighter than ever. It pulled itself halfway out of the stone, as if reaching toward him. Lyra rushed to his side. "You were screaming in your sleep. What happened?" Jake stood slowly. "The sword tested me. Not my strength, my soul." He held out his hand. The glowing marks on his skin now ran up his arm, all the way to his neck. I passed. He stepped forward. And for the first time, the sword responded to his will. It hummed with power and sent out a burst of blue energy that lit the entire valley. On a nearby mountain, a shadow cult watcher saw the light. The trial is complete, he whispered. The cult leader growled. Then we move to the final stage. If he unlocks the sword, nothing can stop him. Back in the cave, Jake looked down at his hand. He could feel it now, the sword's first power, a wave of energy, strong enough to blast stone apart with a thought. But it wasn't just a weapon. It was alive. It had accepted him. Now what? Lyra asked. Jake looked toward the stars. Now I stop running. Now I fight back. And far above Zarok, something ancient moved again. Earth's lost legacy was no longer silent. Asterisk, the sky above Zarok cracked open like glass. Red ships rained down like fire. The shadow cult had come to kill the human, but Jake Carter didn't run this time. He walked to the black stone, eyes calm, heart steady. The sword, still half-buried, glowed bright blue. The air around it shimmered. Thunder rolled across the valley, but there were no clouds. Lyra grabbed his arm. There are too many. We have to leave. Jake didn't move. He looked at the approaching army, hundreds of shadow warriors in black armor, carrying weapons shaped like bones. No, he said softly. I'm done running. In the cult's command ship, the masked leader watched the human through red glass screens. Why doesn't he flee? One general asked. The leader hissed. Because he thinks the sword will save him. Let's show him it won't. The army advanced. Jake stepped forward and did something no one had ever done. He placed both hands on the ancient sword and pulled. The stone cracked. The sky shook. The sword, finally free, rose into the air with a scream of light. It wasn't just a weapon. It was a beacon. The energy blast it released swept through the valley like a storm, knocking back the front lines of the Shadow Army. Aliens watching from far away dropped to their knees in shock. The sword. It's free. Jake didn't speak. He glowed. His body was wrapped in a blue aura. The sword floated beside him like it was alive. His eyes were bright white. The marks on his arms pulsed with power. Lyra stared at him. You're not just holding the sword. You are the sword. Jake looked at the battlefield. And raised the blade. The Shadow Army attacked. Jake moved like lightning. Every swing of the sword sent waves of blue force, tearing through enemy ranks. Their weapons melted. Their armor cracked, but Jake wasn't killing to conquer. He was fighting to protect. And that made him even stronger. The cult leader stepped onto the field. He was 9 feet tall, covered in shadow metal armor, his voice like crushed stone. You don't understand what you've done. He growled. Jake stood firm. No, I understand perfectly. You're afraid of what I might become. The leader charged. The ground exploded as their blades met. The fight shook the valley. Each clash sent out shockwaves, but Jake had something the cult didn't single quotes did purpose. He fought not for power, but for truth, for the future. And with one final strike, Jake shattered the leader's weapon. Then he raised the sword high, and the sky itself answered. Above Zarok, a signal shot into space. A bright blue pulse, faster than light. In the silence of the galaxy, ancient human satellites blinked to life. Long-dead ships turned their engines back on. Buried machines stirred beneath alien soil. And on a far-off world, a human voice whispered, someone just activated the last sword. Earth is not extinct. Back in the valley, the Shadow Army fell back, their leader defeated. The cause broken. Lyra ran to Jake's side. They're leaving. Jake lowered the sword. Its glow faded slightly. He looked around at the valley, burned, broken, but free. He had won the battle, but something inside him knew this was just the beginning. The stars were calling. Jake Carter stood on the edge of a cliff, the sword glowing softly at his side. The valley below was quiet. The battle was over. But far above, something was coming, something human. A bright light streaked across the sky. Not a comet, a ship. For the first time in 1,000 years, a human ship entered Zarok's orbit. Lyra watched from behind him. That's Earth tech, isn't it? Jake didn't answer. His heart was beating too fast. That ship was responding to the sword's signal, the one it sent when he lifted it. The signal that said, "We're still here." The ship landed just beyond the battlefield. It was old, rusted in places, but still flew like a ghost from history. The ramp lowered with a hiss. Two figures walked out. Humans. Their faces were shocked as they saw Jake. Their scanner beeped wildly. One of them dropped to their knees. "No way, no way." Jake stepped forward. "Who are you?" The woman replied, trembling. "Commander Rhea, Earth Resistance. We picked up your signal." Jake blinked. "Earth still exists?" Rhea nodded. "Barely. It went into hiding after the Great Collapse. But the sword, it was our last hope. We thought it was lost forever." She stared at Jake. "But now it's found you." Inside the ship, Jake saw photos of old Earth cities, war records, maps of hidden outposts. The Resistance had been waiting for someone, a spark, to wake up the legacy of human power. They hadn't found it in warriors. They hadn't found it in weapons. They found it in him. Later, under the two moons of Zarek, the Resistance and Jake sat around a fire with Lyra and a few brave aliens. For the first time in centuries, human and alien sat side by side as all eyes. Jake held the sword, now fully awakened. It was no longer just metal. It pulsed like a heartbeat. It remembered Earth. And Jake had one more memory to unlock. That night, the sword showed him the final vision, a secret buried even deeper than the past. The ancient human general, the one who looked just like Jake, was not just a leader. He was the sword's creator. And Jake? He wasn't a copy. He was his descendant, the last in a line of warriors chosen not to conquer, but to restore balance. Jake woke from the vision with tears in his eyes. "I understand now." At dawn, Jake stood before the crowd. "The war is not over," he said. "The shadow cult was just the beginning. There are other threats, other lost weapons, but we don't need fear." He raised the sword. "We need hope. We need to remember who we were and who we can still be." The crowd cheered. Lyra smiled. "What will you do now?" Jake looked to the stars. "I'll go back to Earth." He looked at the sword, but not alone. As the ship lifted into the sky, the sword glowed bright in Jake's hands. The galaxy would remember Earth. Because Earth was coming back. And this time. They wouldn't be forgotten.